Well, hello, my paranormal peeps, and welcome back to another Deep Woods Paranormal podcast. My name is Matt Harvey. I am the founder and lead investigator with Deep Woods Paranormal. My wife and I, along with others, investigate everything paranormal in nature. Every week, we will discuss everything from creepy haunted locations to ghosts to Bigfoot, UFOs, Dogman, and other cryptid creatures, and explore all things paranormal in nature. Hello, my paranormal peeps. Today we've got an award-winning author. His name's Ron Felber. He's written many books. He's written The Mojave Incident, which actually is based off an alien abduction story, which is really cool. As you guys know, we've been working the alien stories here in Brazos Valley with the cattle mutilations and stuff like that. And I'm going to follow that up with another podcast next week, talking about some UFOs I've been seeing lately. Since we moved to Texas, I've actually seen quite a few strange things in the sky, and so we'll talk more about that later. But anyways, maybe we'll talk to him a little bit about that. And then also he just wrote the book called The Unwelcomed: The Curious Case of Clara Flower, and it's based off of an exorcism and stuff like that. You guys have seen the book, The Exorcist, or read the book, The Exorcism, or maybe seen the movie. And I think there's two different movies on it. I think the original one was actually the best, but probably got it closer to being right. But anyways, so we want to talk to Ron Felber about that book and see what got him into that. So tell us a little bit about yourself. What got you into writing and stuff?
Well, yeah, actually, I've been writing since I was in the sixth grade, so that's a long time.
Oh wow.
But like a lot of people my age, and maybe you as well, I grew up on the Twilight Zone,
Oh yeah.
and all those great chiller theater and all like that. So, um, even though I didn't start out writing about paranormal things, once the opportunity came, and I got a really great story, a true story of alien abduction, and wrote the Mojave incident that came to me via the friend of a friend sort of thing. I jumped on it, and the book did very well. But this particular book, the new one, since you're wearing an Exorcist shirt, I met William Peter Blatty,
Really?
who wrote The Exorcist, while he was filming The Exorcist, because I was a student at Georgetown University when they were filming.
Nice.
So I had a novel at the time. So I was 18, I think, something like that. And I had my first novel. So I wrangled my way to a meeting with him. Finally, he read the book, my novel. He liked it enough to say, "Well, let's meet." He called me on the phone. So we did meet. He didn't help me with that particular novel, but we became very good friends over the years.
That's
And he
awesome.
said, Ron, there's a story that that is amazing. And it's one of the stories I based The Exorcist on. There were two primary ones, one about Clara Fowler, which took place at Boston, the turn of the century, and the other took place, I think, in 1949 in Maryland. So those were primarily the two cases he based The Exorcist on. He said, I was going to write a book about this, and I uncovered all this in my research, this story, but I'm going to do something else. Why don't you write it? So
Awesome.
he gave me an introduction to the Harvard Medical School Library archives. And in the archives was the entire case history, photographs, letters from the doctors, between the doctors, letters from the patient, transcripts, because they had a stenographer there while the hypnotism was going on and the retrogressive hypnotism, and also the general sessions, and even the exorcism. So all of it was there. All of it was there,
So
and it was just
amazing. That must have been amazing to read through. And
it was,
clearly.
and I studied it. I mean, I spent days and nights at the Harvard Medical School Library going through notes, and even hired a detective to help me find out some of the real names, because they used pseudonyms. They redacted, they crossed out the real
Oh yeah.
name. And so I had a detective look into the real people and got their genealogy and their biographies and whatnot. So that it's pretty well founded on a true case that's just amazing, an amazing story.
Yeah. Well, like we were talking about in the pre-interview, and I one of my first cases ever was kind of a cross between a poltergeist and demonic activity. And I walked into it. I had no idea what was going on. And so I've experienced it for myself. So I know how crazy it is. And I think I saw some amazing things. I saw an angel, I saw a demon, I saw things
Hmm.
move on their own. The room, I mean, we were in an 80-degree room and we were freezing our butts off. I mean, we
Mm,
had to cover him up with a blanket because he was just shivering.
yes.
And
Well, the same thing. Basically, the voice of this woman who was 22 at the time would change to that of a man. So it would be this explosive,
wow.
malevolent voice. The face would remold. So it
Yep.
wouldn't be the woman's face anymore. The eyes would just be
Right.
like vicious, ferocious eyes.
Right.
Um, she would speak in different languages that she couldn't possibly know, Latin,
Yep.
Greek,
Yep.
tremendous strength, you know, like
Hmm.
the strength of like 10 people. So it all the classic symptoms, but what makes the unwelcome, the curious case of Clara Fowler a little different, I think, is it really becomes a murder mystery because there were three murders that were involved.
Yeah.
And her two siblings died both at 4 days old, separated by 4 years. One died at 4 days old. 4 years later, the second one died under mysterious or suspicious, let's say, circumstances. And then Clara Fowler's ex-husband was also wound up many years later being murdered. And the detective was involved, a fellow named Rufus Hilliard, who investigated the Lizzie Borden murders.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so he had investigated the Lizzie Borden murders. Then there was an axe murder a few months after that, and only a few miles away in Fall River, a guy named Jose Corriero axe murdered his boss's wife, Bertha Manchester, to death. And so he investigated those. Then he found out about these two murders in the Fowler house. He was convinced the father had strangled these infants and
Wow.
wanted Clara to be a witness against him. So
Oh my gosh.
it's a
Yeah.
pretty intricate story.
Yeah, it sounds like it. I mean, you got everything in there. You got, paranormal stuff, you got murder stuff, you got, yeah, it sounds like a really good book. I'm gonna be ordering it. If we're done, I'm gonna be on Amazon ordering that book. I'll
Well,
put the links below to everything, to his story, to his books and stuff if I can find both of them. But for sure we'll be putting this book on there, the Curious Case of Anna Flower, excuse me, Clara Flower, if I
Clara
can say.
Fowler and the Unwelcomed,
Um,
yes.
yeah, because it's definitely a paranormal thriller. I'm also looking forward to reading your other book about the UFOs and the aliens and stuff. That'll be cool. So we'll definitely link that down below.
Well,
But when
thank
you
you.
were researching this and writing this, did you have anything paranormal happen at all?
Well, I'll tell you two quick stories. Okay, one of them is about the alien abduction thing. As a matter
Uh-huh.
of fact, I'm going to be retrogressed myself in May
Oh
by
wow.
a retrogressive hypnotist, and that will be he's in Tampa, Florida. So I'm going to
Oh,
go to
cool.
Tampa, Florida, and we'll spend a couple of days together. But there were a lot of coincidences that went into my finding the story of the Hesses, the alien abduction couple. A lot of coincidences. And then prior to that, I had this tremendous dream, very, very vivid, about going into a UFO. But I knew it was a dream. It was in a pond, and I actually went into the pond, felt myself in this UFO. And I always thought, well, it's a dream. It's a vivid dream, but a dream
Yeah.
nonetheless. Then I went to the doctor to get a knee operation, and it was the second one I'd had. And he showed me an X-ray, and he held it up, and he goes, you have a clip or the tip of a surgical instrument or something that's lodged in your knee.
Oh
He
my
goes,
gosh.
it's deep, and I tried to get it out during the surgery, but I couldn't. But I thought you should know.
That's
I
insane.
said, so is it dangerous? He goes, well, you've had it for years, so I don't think it's dangerous, but it's odd. Maybe it's a tool broke off, which is unlikely, or maybe they left a clip in, which is unlikely. He said, but it's there. Then I was watching an alien abduction show, and this guy that claimed to be abducted by aliens
Yeah.
said, I have a probe, and look, here's the X-ray. And in his knee, he had a metal object that was almost identical to
Oh
what
my
the doctor
gosh.
had shown me. So I'm going to get retrogressed and see if that dream was more than a dream.
Yeah. Yeah. That's crazy.
then as far as the Unwelcomed, this is spooky stuff. I mean,
Definitely.
it really truly is.
Yeah.
And so my wife, my new wife, I have a wife of 2 years. So we've been married 2 years, and it's just been
Awesome.
great. And she's a little suspect of these books that I've been writing.
Yeah.
Why don't you write about the Boy Scouts or something? Write about something else that isn't so scary. But she's had a number of things. Like in the middle of the night, she'll wake up and say, "Did you see that?" And say that something had crossed the room, a dark shadow had crossed the room.
Yep.
And actually, we have outside in our garage, those things where you open it up and you push the buttons and the garage door will open?
Mhm.
Yeah. So this is closed and it's clipped on, it's closed pretty tight, but frequently, meaning once a week, we find the thing totally up. And we
Wow.
say, like, is somebody trying to get into our house or what? And so those are two things that we found that were a little odd. And of course, my wife has had a couple of dreams that have been strange.
Yeah. Well, they say that when you go to sleep, the only thing left on is your what's it called? Shoot. There's only one little part of your brain that's
The unconscious mind,
yeah, the consciousness, your subconscious stays
the
on. And all
subconscious.
it's in charge of is basically keeping you breathing and keeping you barely functioning. The rest of your
Hmm.
brain goes to sleep. So your memory, all that stuff, it's not on. So when
Yes.
you wake up and you can remember a dream, there's a theory that, we're electricity. Our brains run off, they're like a computer, right?
Yeah.
They basically run off electric currents. They send it through our body to make us move. There's a theory that spirits can manipulate those currents and make us, remember or put an impression in our head or whatever. So
Right.
sometimes, people that are more sensitive or psychic or medium or whatever will have those things happen. Like Amanda dreams about stuff all the time and she wakes up and she can vividly remember those things. I rarely have any good dreams, let's put it this way, or I remember anything. Most of the time it's me battling demons in my head, but when I'm sleeping, or negative things, or being in a creepy place, or
Hmm.
seeing strange things. Like
Yes.
I was just dreaming about a female baby Bigfoot this morning before you called, and I'm like, what the hell is that about? It was injured, and I was chasing it across the road. I'm like, how did I remember that? Maybe because I just woken up.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
yeah,
But
so that was strange.
this woman, Clara Fowler, was studied by some of the premier scientists of that time.
Hmm.
One of them was William James. I don't know if you've ever heard of him, but William James was the first
Familiar.
practitioner of abnormal psychology, and he taught at Harvard University Medical School. He was the first one to teach abnormal psych. And so he is one of the people that studied her, along with Dr. Morton Prince, who was one of the premier doctors and a contemporary of Sigmund Freud. But they studied it to this extent. This in the second state, the consciousness, the demonic state, had no pain whatsoever, felt no need for food or for sleep, was up 24/7. Again, no fatigue, no illness, a tremendous strength, and would go into rages at religious articles, whether it was a church or whether it was a priest or whether it was a rosary or the Bible, would just drive
Wow. Yeah.
crazy.
Hmm.
And the original personality, the Clara Fowler, who was a sort of mild-mannered student at Radcliffe College, wanted to be a nun. So she was going to go to college and then go into a convent. And of course, the demonic state said, not as long as I'm around.
Yeah,
And
exactly. Yeah.
so she had visitations from the Blessed Virgin,
Wow.
visitations from Jesus Christ.
Hmm.
And so this became like a real and true spiritual battle between
Right.
good and evil. And she was the pawn in the middle.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, they wanted her for some reason.
Maybe because of that, but it turned out, Matt, that she was from Fall River, where Lizzie Borden had her murders, Juan Corriero had his murders. I mentioned the two Fowler children that were murdered. There was a satanic cult there, and her father
Oh.
was part of it.
Oh, wow.
So this may well have ushered in the forces or the demonic presence.
Hmm.
that haunted her for most of her life. But believe it or not, she got cured. It wasn't exorcism. She was cured and wound up marrying one of the doctors
Wow.
and became a socialite,
Wow.
a high level socialite in Boston high society. And nobody knew about this because her name was disguised.
Right.
But yes, she wound up being cured and married one of her physicians.
Wow. I was just going to ask you if they were able to cure her. That's really hard to do. That's
Yeah.
really hard to get rid of an exorcism. I mean, to do
Well,
it.
she still had lapses. How, she still had lapses into missing time, for example. But by all measures, she was cured and I guess was married to the right guy, her doctor, right?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, he could help her out in the middle of the night and stuff and protect her from that stuff. Hopefully,
Exactly. Exactly.
most medical doctors don't really believe in either side of that, but it's very interesting that they ended up together.
You know who's starting to believe more and more in the other side of things, the other world, as they call it, are physicists and
Hmm.
astrophysicists. More and more people are looking at what was like Sir Isaac Newton, gravity, of apple falls from the tree kind of thing, and traditional physics. But now with you know the new physics, the new ideas about physics, and how the world operates. Most people are saying now, most physicists, we know very little about what's real.
Right,
What we see is not necessarily what's real.
right.
And if it is real, it's a pinpoint in time. It's not the full measure of things. And
Yeah,
quantum mechanics teaches us that there may be multiple universes. There may be interdimensional beings, and maybe that's what demons are, and that's what angels are. Maybe they're interdimensional beings and aliens as well.
right. Well, I've talked to a lot of people about different theories, and you know, they're saying that maybe we're the aliens, and because maybe we were on Mars, and maybe we've been traveling through planet from planet, and basically, as we destroy planets, we move to the next one, and because Mars supposedly used to have an atmosphere and stuff like that. It used to be just very close to what Earth was. And
hmm
the
Well,
theory
there's a famous scientist named Francis Crick, Crick. He was the co-founder of DNA and won the Nobel Prize for Science in 1958 for the discovery of DNA. And his theory is that another civilization, he doesn't believe in evolution, doesn't
yeah,
believe in it. He thinks that enough because the time to create a human brain through an evolutionary process, there's just not enough time. His theory is that a more advanced civilization, extraterrestrial civilization, sent out their DNA into the universe with
hmm,
asteroids, meteors, etc. And so sometimes they took and sometimes they didn't. But in the case of Earth, the asteroid or meteor went through Van Halen's belt. The radioactivity activated the DNA. It wound up in swamps and whatnot. And so evolution had a head start. And the head start was the DNA of aliens, which makes us kind of aliens.
yeah. Yeah, that's what this person was saying. Well, he was talking about how if you go back through like Egyptian times and you look at
Yes.
hieroglyphs, there's
hmm
in some of the hieroglyphs, there's a person sitting at a computer,
Yes.
there's a person on a cell phone,
hmm
there's a person basically, there's a plane flying across one of the hieroglyphs and
Yes.
stuff like that, and the technology they had. I mean, insane. It's. He said that basically humans back then were smarter than they are now. We had more technology back then than we did now. I mean, if you look even at the Aztecs and stuff like that, they have
hmm
similar hieroglyphs and
Yes.
stuff like that. So it makes you wonder. And they have, some of them have pictures of flying saucers and stuff like that. And
Well, maybe you've seen Chariots of the Gods. Van Donnegut is the guy's name who wrote it, Chariots of the Gods. But he goes back in history and looks at a whole variety of cave drawings and
Mhm.
pyramids and all the rest, and comes up with a very similar theory.
Yeah, yeah,
So it's
yeah.
out there.
We researched Bigfoot as well, and so essentially a lot of people say that maybe the Bigfoots were here first, and that basically when mankind kind of came to Earth or came to being, we pushed them away, we pushed them
Hmm.
underneath, back into
Hmm.
caves and stuff like that and stuff.
Hmm.
So maybe we hunted them, and then if you look at a lot of the ancient Indians, they used to basically, communicate with the Bigfoots. They would come into their territories, and they would exchange. They do something called gifting now, where we leave
Hmm.
something out in the woods and you come back and you find something else like a stick or a rock
Yeah.
or I don't
Uh-huh.
know if you've ever heard of that stuff, but
No, I haven't. I
it's
haven't. That's
pretty
interesting.
interesting. I mean, maybe the next book you can write is about Bigfoots. That'd be
Maybe.
cool.
Hey, one quick thing about that. So with the Hesses, this couple that was abducted by aliens in the Mojave Desert,
Uh-huh.
they described in great detail what the aliens looked like, and they talked about illuminated figures and, the big heads, big eyes,
Hmm.
two holes pretty much for nostrils, etc. But very vivid descriptions. Very near where they were abducted were caves. And the caves had been 500, 600 years prior to that, occupied by Indian tribes, the Mojave Indians, and in that area, and they had
Right.
petroglyphs, which would be cave drawings, and the cave drawings were identical in terms of appearance to what the Hesses said they saw in 1989.
That's crazy.
Isn't it?
Yeah. So essentially, also a theory that aliens are actually on our planet. I don't know if you
Oh,
have
sure. Yeah, no, I've heard that. Yeah,
USOs and UFOs, and they
I
call them all
have heard
different things
that.
now. But there's a theory that they're actually like Mount St. Helens. They're saying
Hmm.
that there's some kind of force field around it, and there's another volcano up in I think Washington or around Seattle that they've been seeing flying in and out of, and
I've seen footage of that,
yeah. So yeah, like Mount
video.
St. Helens is said to have all kinds of strange paranormal activity. If you go up into the higher elevations, there's supposedly some kind of alien civilization that's up there and
Mm.
stuff like that. So it's just
Well, the other one is under the ocean. I mean, that's the classic
yeah.
thing. I think, if I'm not mistaken, something like 5/7 of the world is the Earth is
Mhm.
water, is covered by water.
Right.
And what a perfect place to have another civilization or landing
Right.
ports, whatever you might need, because most of it is unexplored.
Right.
I mean, we know more about, with the terrestrial land than we do about what's underneath the ocean.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I heard a story from somebody that said that NASA originally was going to be an underwater exploratory, company. Essentially, that's what their goal was.
I didn't know that. No.
Supposedly, they were doing a deep dive and ran into something, and were scared out of the water, essentially. So they turned to space. So yeah, just strange. I mean,
Yeah.
these are just stories, but yeah, I mean, this is just things that I've heard.
Well,
So
also we talked about, I mentioned the petroglyphs in the Mojave Desert. And, I misspoke. It was the Paiute Indians, I believe, that were there. But they have what they call the Mojave Twins. And from the air, you can look down and see these beings.
wow.
There are land drawings of these beings. You can just look it up. You
Oh
go
yeah,
to
yeah, yeah.
YouTube or
Oh
or
yeah.
wherever. I mean, it's not hard to find,
Mhm.
but vividly, accurately described in detail what these alien beings look like. There are these huge land drawings of those very same creatures that can be seen from the sky. And again, this is not mysterious to the point that it's hard to find. It's very easy to find. You can go on the internet, you can find it in books, but there are many photographs of those Mojave twins, as they're called.
That's crazy. Yeah, we'll have to look into that too. Maybe we can do a podcast on that one of these days and talk about that. Pretty interesting. But yeah. So, is there anything else you want to tell us about your book?
Well, I think that it's really unique. I'm really pleased that I was lucky enough to get it. I mentioned William Blatty, the author of The Exorcist, passed it along, and I was very thankful for that. But I think it's really unique, and I think it's important, Matt, because if there's a devil, there are angels.
Hmm.
And if there are devils and angels, there's a God.
Right.
And if there's a God, maybe there's a life everlasting. And
Yep.
maybe stories like this, and this in particular, since it's so well documented, really give us an insight into what being a human being means,
Hmm.
what life is really about. And it may well be the kind of proof to some people that there is an afterlife and that there is a divine creator. And these are the basic questions people for forever have been asking since
Right. Yeah.
people were on the earth.
Definitely. Yeah. So yeah, I've been doing this I've been experiencing the paranormal my whole life, but I've been researching it for God, what is it, 30 years now? And I've experienced exactly what you're talking about. Just demons, angels,
Mhm.
ghosts, human spirits, or whatever you want to
Right.
call them, and stuff.
These are the great mysteries.
Yeah.
And yeah, I just wanted to show a copy of the book if I could.
So cool
This is
looking.
the
Yeah.
Unwelcomed.
It makes me I just want to click off here and go on Amazon and buy it right now.
Just
So,
spooky cover.
yeah.
And it's a spooky story. Actually, I mentioned my wife, she read it, in the manuscript form. She didn't sleep for 3 nights. So
Oh my goodness.
it's been called by critics, one of the critics, the perhaps the most frightening book about demonic possession ever written.
Oh
So
jeez.
it's a scary one, and it's a
Oh my
truth.
gosh. Is that available like on audiobook too and stuff like that?
It's available right now on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, any of the online or in bookstores to pre-order, so you can order it now. The Kindle book is available now. An ebook will be available next month in a couple
Awesome.
of weeks, and an audio book will be available in a couple of weeks as well.
Awesome. Well, I'm looking forward to that. Are you going to be writing any more books in the future?
Do you know
Paranormal?
I told you about this retrogressive
Yeah, yeah.
hypnosis that I'm going to be going through. We'll see where that takes us. But uh, if there's a story there, and if this dream was more than a dream, maybe that's my next book. On the other hand, I've been doing some studying on. I'm leaving for Portugal the end of the month. I'm going to go to Fatima, where the Virgin Mary appeared
That's
to these
awesome.
three young girls.
Right.
But I might look at something like the Shroud of Turin, which was
Hmm.
Jesus's the burial cloth, and sort of the radiation that they say created that image now. I mean, there's a lot of new research that says that this is authentic. And if
Crazy.
that's the case, and then the case in Fatima, and then there was a case from 1968 to 1970 in Zatoum, Egypt, where the Virgin Mary appeared in front of like thousands and thousands of people almost on a nightly basis at the top of this church. And I think there's a huge connection between demonic possession, alien abduction, and these spiritual phenomenon like Fatima, the Shroud of Turin, and also the Zatoum Egyptian visitations. So I might look into that. I think it's fascinating.
Oh, that'd be awesome. You have to keep me updated if you do write that. So we're running out of time, unfortunately, guys. We will maybe have him back on if he writes another book, and maybe we'll have questions for him later. If you guys want to leave a comment down below and ask him about his book or anything, we can always forward that to him. Ron Felber, thank you very much for being on the Deep Woods Paranormal Podcast. We really appreciate you taking your time, and we look forward to seeing new books from you in the future.
Okay, Matt, thanks so much for having me.
All right, guys. All his information will be linked down below, so you can buy his book. I know I'm going to, and you guys take care and stay haunted.